Let's take a look at how we can overload methods and constructors. Now you might want to design methods with the same intent, like for example print, in order to print out several different types. And you could design a method for each type. So we have three methods: print int, print float, and print string. But this would be a bit tedious and not very object oriented. So instead you could create a reusable method name and just change the argument list. And this process is called overloading. Now with overloading methods, the argument list must be different, both in order, number, or type. And the return types can be different. However, no two methods with the same argument list that only differ in return type are allowed. So at the bottom of our slide we have public void print int I and public string print with a int I parameter. So that's not legal because we have the same argument list and we're only changing the return type. Now, in addition to overloading your methods in your classes, you can also overload the constructors. And the overloaded constructor is actually called based upon the parameters specified when the new is executed. So if we have our new employee, for example, if we pass in only 3 parameters, then it would look for a constructor that has those same 3 parameters. If we had an additional or a fourth one as in one of our overloaded constructors, then when we call new employee and pass in the 4 parameter, then that constructor with the 4 parameters would be used instead. So here we have an example that demonstrates our overloaded constructors. So there's actually 3 overloaded constructors, and it's all based on the number of arguments. We have the first one, which is no arguments. We have public box, and it goes and it sets the length, height, and width of our box class. We then have another constructor that accepts the length only, and from that we can specify that our box's width and length would be equal to that, and the height would be equal to that length value that was passed in. And then lastly we have our third one, which allows you to set both the length, width, and the height. So that makes up our 3 constructors. So we can create our box object instance using any of those 3 constructors. Now, another thing to bring up at this point is the fact of single inheritance, and the fact that our Java programming language only allows a class to extend one other class. So this is our single inheritance. So we've talked about how we have an employee class, and then we can have our manager extend that employee class. Well, then we can also have our director extend manager, and then it gets the benefits of fields and methods in employee and manager to be a part of director. However, our engineering class, our engineer can only extend employee. It couldn't extend director as well. So we can't have an engineer that's both an employee and a director or even a manager. So single inheritance, you can only call extends and extend one class name to be your superclass.